Ever since the Coke 600 race, there's been a lot of speculation as to whether NASCAR should grant a waiver to Kyle Larson for not starting the race in Charlotte. But just a couple of days back, NASCAR decided to approve the waiver to allow Larson to compete in the playoffs this year. However, some feel that NASCAR came to this decision because they were scared of the backlash they could have received if they had denied the waiver. According to the rules and regulations, a driver must start in all regular season races to qualify for the playoffs. Larson was unable to do so as he was attempting the double but was delayed in Indianapolis due to bad weather. While bad weather prevented Kyle Larson from completing the double, nothing is going to prevent us from providing you with the latest news surrounding NASCAR. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button for our channel. You won't regret it. The double is when a driver competes in both the Indy 500 race and the Coke 600 race on the same day. This achievement is one of the most difficult ones in motorsport, not just because of how physically and mentally exhausting it'll be, but also because it depends on various other factors outside the driver's control, such as delays due to red flags or bad weather conditions. This year, the Indy 500 race was delayed by 4 hours due to the bad weather conditions. This made it impossible for Larson to travel back to Charlotte in time to start the Coke 600. So the plan for Hendrick Motorsports was to start the Coke 600 with Xfinity driver Justin Allgaier in the number 5 car. Once Larson completes the Indy 500, he would make his way to Charlotte in time to compete in the second half of the Coke 600 race. Although this would not make him eligible for the playoffs, he would become one of the drivers to have completed the double. Everything was going according to plan for Larson. He flew back to Charlotte and was suited up, ready to get in the car. But then, the same storm that delayed the Indy 500 had made its way to Charlotte to bring an early end to the race. Larson couldn't even get a lap in, hence his attempt at the double was a failure. After the attempt, most of the fans felt that Larson deserved the waiver as he had spent hours dedicating himself to completing this feat. Knowing that he wouldn't be able to qualify for the playoffs after the Indy 500, he still made his way to Charlotte and was ready to get in the car. However, some fans felt that giving a waiver would set a bad precedent, as it would encourage other drivers to compete in other racing competitions. However, NASCAR has approved the waiver, but it seems as though the pressure was too high for NASCAR. Larson's playoff eligibility has been thoroughly discussed on social media platforms. Given that most fans felt that the waiver was deserved, NASCAR would have suffered a huge backlash if they had blocked Larson from competing in the playoffs. Here's what NASCAR's VP of Competition had to say about the decision. To not have Kyle Larson in our playoff and give our fans the opportunity, the chance to see him race for a championship. At the end of the day, that didn't feel like that was the right decision for us to make. We didn't. There was a lot of discussion internally. We ultimately landed at giving Kyle a waiver, NASCAR executive Elton Sawyer said in a statement. Essentially, our decision-making was, although he had the inclement weather in Indianapolis, as well as Charlotte, Kyle made every attempt to get to Charlotte. He was standing in the pit box with his helmet on, ready to go. Unfortunately, we had weather in Charlotte as well, and were unfortunately not able to get the race going again. That's how we landed on our decision. Elton Sawyer claims that the decision was made because of the dedication Larson showed in completing the double. But it's no secret that NASCAR had all the grounds to block the waiver. After all, when the Indy 500 was delayed, Larson had the chance to prioritize his full-time racing seat in NASCAR and leave the Indy 500. Instead, Larson chose to stay at Indianapolis. After the Coke 600 race was suspended, Larson admitted that he was feeling a bit low. Cliff Daniels gave me a good, nice phone call and all of that. I wasn't as sad about how the IndyCar race turned out. I was just sad that I didn't get a chance to get into the car and get going. I felt like I was, in my heart and my mind, I felt like I was letting these guys down, because I didn't get to talk to them before the race, Larson explained. He continued, I thought if I was in their shoes, I don't know what they were thinking. I didn't want them thinking I chose something else over them. But after talking to Cliff, everybody was in great spirits and all of that, and proud that I was an Indy representing their team. It all made me feel better, but I just didn't really know, so I felt depressed for a night or two. I mean, I would like to do it again just because I can't imagine the weather could get any worse or could screw up the plans any worse, Larson quipped. I think if I was to do it again, it would go smoother. Larson was more upset because he thought he disappointed his crew members by prioritizing the Indy 500. However, Larson's crew chief, Cliff Daniels, gave him a pep talk and reassured to him that the crew was behind him through thick and thin. The owner of Kyle Larson's team in NASCAR, Rick Hendrick, said this after the waiver was approved. Under normal circumstances, completing the double is one of the toughest tests in sports. Despite our best efforts, this year's combination of weather conditions in Indianapolis and Charlotte made it impossible. We hoped race day would play out differently, but the program was still incredibly positive for everyone involved. Kyle's performance throughout May was a great reflection on the level of talent competing each week in the NASCAR Cup Series. Although losing ground in the standings was hard to swallow, we were especially disappointed for the fans at the Coca-Cola 600 who were not able to see Kyle race. Hendrick said, "I'm extremely proud of everything he did to prepare and the months of planning by our team and our partners at Arrow McLaren to run these two crown jewel events. We appreciate NASCAR communicating with us throughout the effort and granting our request for a playoff waiver." It is clearly visible that Hendrick Motorsports completely supported the decision Kyle Larson had made to compete in the double, and it looks as though NASCAR is okay with the precedent that has been set by approving the waiver. But setting a controversial precedent is better than facing the backlash NASCAR would have received if Larson's waiver was not approved. During an interview, Elton Sawyer encouraged more drivers to attempt the double. Indy is a big race. Obviously, the Coke 600 is a big race for us as well. But if we can look at motorsports in general, the Indy 500 is a big event. We embrace the double. We think it's great. We want to see other drivers have that opportunity. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but every situation is different, and I feel like we have the parameters in our rulebook and the team here at the R&D to make the best decision, and that's ultimately what we're hired to do, Sawyer added. Although Larson was not able to complete the double this year, there's nothing stopping him from attempting it again next year. As he mentioned before, he got the worst of it this year, so things will only get better on his next try. There's still another year left in Hendrick Motorsports' partnership with McLaren, so the Papaya team would be more than happy to give Larson the chance to compete in the Indy 500 once again next year. Now that Larson is qualified for the playoffs, he will be focusing on getting himself back on the top of the points table. After the last race in Illinois, Larson finds himself in second place, just 21 points behind Denny Hamlin. He has another 11 races to get back to first position, which would give him a 15-point bonus for the playoffs. This would give him the best chance at winning the Cup Series title this year. During the first half of the season, the NASCAR grid was dominated by Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing. However, in the second half, the teams running the Ford cars are making an impact. During the last race, we saw Austin Cindric win the race for Penske, while Larson was all the way down in 10th. So there's no doubt that the second half of the season will not be as simple as the first half. We're going to see some more drivers making an impact on the track. Larson will now have to fight his way through if he hopes to win his second Cup Series championship. It's going to be interesting to see how the second half of the playoffs plays out. But none of this would have been possible if NASCAR hadn't approved the waiver, whether they did it out of fear or not. Do you think Kyle Larson will be able to win his second Cup Series championship this year? Also, do you think NASCAR approved Larson's waiver in fear of the backlash they would have faced if they hadn't? Post your thoughts in the comment section below.